Jared Kelenic is the perfect fit.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It is local insight you can't get anywhere else but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and of course, alongside me are Grant McAuley and Jarvis Davis. Today's episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked on. And of course, our Atlanta Baseball Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So is maximum worth the max in Atlanta? We'll talk about it in Going Deep. And has Schwelly, as I have coined him, done enough to earn that fit spot? We'll talk about that in the stretch. But first, let's talk about the Braves. Finally, seemingly in the midst of a resurgence on offense, Grant, Jared Kelenic has put in work since being inserted into that leadoff position. In fact, he homered and drove in 2 runs in the Braves 3-1 win over the Yankees Sunday. He's hitting .324 with 3 home runs and 6 RBI as of Sunday in an 8-game stretch since moving into that top spot in the order. Does that seem like for you maybe a natural fit for him, at least for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, it definitely does for him. I felt like there was going to be that opportunity if he got things going for the Braves to do a couple of things. Number one, see Jared Kelenic finally living up to that potential that so many people, including himself, believe he has, which I think he's beginning to do in an Atlanta uniform. But also, when you're dealing with a team that doesn't have Ronald Acuna Jr. and the next guy up was Michael Harris, and he's going to be out for weeks and weeks, you had to have somebody step up in that leadoff spot. And I felt like Jared Kelenic was a good candidate for that because he does a few things well. Number one, he's hot, and riding the hot hand right now is going to be important. He runs the base as well. I think he works some pretty good at bats, and he's going to strike out some. But, I mean, that's baseball in 2024, or the modern era of baseball. As long as he's doing so many other things well, you can live with a handful of strikeouts here and there. But to your point, I mean, 8-game hitting streak in being inserted into the leadoff spot, that came to an end in the opener in St. Louis. But still, you track this back over his last 28 games, Kelenic sitting just under 300, slugging over 500. We're starting to see those home runs pile up, and he's playing some pretty good defense in the outfield. So all told, Jared Kelenic, I do feel like he's kind of hitting his stride at a time where the Braves really need him to.
And Jarvis, just like Grant hit on towards the end there, I was thinking the same. Like, I've watched broadcasts, and I've been excited about what we've seen him do defensively across the season so far. But yeah, this uptick slowly but surely on offense has got to be so exciting and so encouraging, especially because also, as Grant mentioned, first you lose Acuna Jr., then you lose MH2 at least for a moment. So now there's at least some confidence and just some encouragement and optimism that Jared Kelenic is doing what he's doing when he's in that leadoff position.
Yeah, it's the mindset, right? When being that leadoff hitter, because Jared Kelenic fully understands who's behind him, right? Like all he has to do is get on base. I love hearing players, professionals talk about that, what their mindset is when they're going to plate, because they understand that they don't have to do everything. Because when he was in Seattle, it was like, hey man, we need you to carry us. We need you to be that guy. When he came over here, no pressure. No pressure whatsoever. Here in the South, a little bit laid back. He can be laid back. He can be that guy. They say, hey, all I got to do is just get on base, figure out a way to get on base, and I'll be doing my job. And when you bring that type of talent to that mindset, that is a great space to be, a headspace to be in. So I think that mindset, him being able to be in that mindset to say, you know what, I don't have to do much. All I got to do is just get on base and do my thing. And the guys behind me, they're going to carry all the heavy load. Exactly that they're doing what they're doing right now, being that they've gotten out of that funk. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Grant, let's go back to mindset. We said in April when we saw the Braves not look like the Braves as far as what they're doing at the plate, it's coming. It's coming. We know they've got the talent. It's there. Then May came. Okay, it's coming. It's coming. And then the beginning of June came, and it's like, oh, wow, is it ever going to come? Well, I think the bats have now warmed up. Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley really kind of going the way. So we're talking about the top of the order, speaking of which, but we're even seeing it in other places with other players not named Marcell Ozuna, right? In the last couple of weeks. And that I think is most encouraging. But again, I don't think we ever thought it was a talent issue. I think we thought it was just something mental and kind of maybe some of those guys getting out of their heads, maybe not pressing as much. Now that they're finally heating up with this offense, this uptick in offense, maybe give Alex Anthopoulos, I don't want to say less of a sense of urgency because I think he's always mindful of where he needs to be, but maybe that panic that the rest of us had is not there so much. And he's still kind of maybe now able even more so to take maybe a pause or a beat to make a decision and the most thoughtful decision about trades.
Well, the big thing I think is, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, is while other people outside of the walls might have been panicking just a bit, I don't think that there was that internal panic for the Braves. Now, another thing you brought up, which I think is a big point of what was going on with this club, was once things started to kind of not go the way they wanted it to, and it became an extended period of time, there was no doubt a degree of pressing individually, collectively. Because, and Brian Snitker said this, everybody wants to be the guy that gets us out of this, but that's a lot to take up to the plate. It's too much responsibility for one person to take to the plate every time they go up there. So I think that, naturally over the course of a long season, there are going to be those ebbs and flows, but the talent is more times than not going to win out and going to show itself, which is what I was saying. It's not a question of, well, if the Braves get going, it's just when are they going to get going? But it took a lot longer than a lot of us expected. But to go all the way back to the trades, which I think is kind of the thing that's going to be on people's minds more and more as we look toward next month, right after the All-Star break, which is right around the corner, by the way. I think Alex Anthopoulos is going to look to make a good club better in that a year ago, even when they had the best offense in baseball, he said, look, we were out there shopping for a big bat. We almost had one, weren't able to get the deal done. But could you imagine if a year ago the Braves were hitting like they were and he's still out there looking for offensive help? Well, we couldn't get an arm we liked, so let's make ourselves an even better offense. I'm sure he's going to approach it with the same creativity, ingenuity, or just flat out just the need to go out and make this club a little bit better in any way he can. So I do think that those trades for outfield or offensive help still going to be toward the top of the list for Alex Anthopoulos and company as they do shop the market and see who's going to be a seller, because we don't know that yet because the expanded field, that's changed a lot of things too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, to add to your point, Grant, that's the beauty of what Alex Anthopoulos has, right? That foresight. He has the foresight to say, he doesn't rest on his laurels and say, hey, oh yeah, we're good. We're one of the best offenses in Braves history, right? But no, we can add, we can be better. And I just love that mind. We're talking about mindset. I think that's the word of the day. That mindset of, hey, say, I'm not going to sit around and just ride this bad boy out. I'm going to figure out, always be in the mindset of figuring out ways to be better. And I think that's one of the reasons why Alex Anthopoulos is probably one of the better general managers in the Major League Baseball.
And I think, too, what was encouraging for me, guys, is the fact that as the Braves started to have upticks, they were getting wins against quality teams. And I know the Yankees have had a little bit of a swoon themselves this past week or so, maybe the past couple of weeks, but they're still a quality team. They're still at the top of the American League, and they're still very much so in the hunt. So being that was the last series that they completed, because of course we know they're going to have a doubleheader here today, Wednesday, because of the rain out last night in St. Louis. But Grant, I think for me, and JD, I think for me, that was also the encouraging piece. Not only the offensive uptick that maybe takes a little bit of pressure off, feeling like your back's up against the wall, or at least outside of the walls, feeling like the backs are up against the walls. But maybe one of the more impressive things as well is hitting with, getting runs, not just 3-1 is great, don't get me wrong, but when you're out there scoring 8 runs and 9 runs, and when you're doing it against quality squads like the Yankees, I think that's also reason and cause for optimism.
Yeah, and there should be. And you're stacking series wins again. That was important. Yes. You saw that road trip that didn't go the way the Braves wanted to. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Nationals twice in a 2-week span. I don't remember the last time that happened, but I'm going to imagine it was probably back in that 2015-16 time frame, the dark ages, if you will. That's just not the club that we're talking about here in terms of talent and ability. And now they turned it around. They were able to take that finale in Baltimore, come home, take 2 out of 3 from the Rays, sweep the Tigers, go to New York, and take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. They need to keep their foot on the gas, obviously, to have a good road trip the way they want to. Try to get out of St. Louis with a win, which is going to be a challenge. They got to sweep a doubleheader and then maybe knock off the White Sox to put it all away. And then this weekend, it will be pretty interesting, too, because they're going to see the Pirates, which is not always must-see TV, except they are going to face Paul Skeens in this series. That is most definitely must-see TV. So they're facing some quality opponents, some quality pitching. but we're seeing the offense averaging 2 home runs per game now over nearly the last 2 weeks. That sounds a lot more like the Braves offense we expected, and it takes the pressure not just off the guys at the plate, but the margin of error for Braves pitchers over the past or over about a 6-7 week stretch. It was pretty much razor thin. If you gave up too much, the offense just wasn't able to get it done. So you got to imagine that the pitchers are able to settle in a little bit more when they see, hey, this offense is clicking. We got these 3 early runs. They're adding on. I can go out there and pitch my game and not really think too much about trying to be perfect, because as we talked about, that's just not a good mindset to approach everything that you do in life or in sports.
Yeah.
And I think that for the pitching rotation, like for them to be hovering around 10 games or so games over 500 with the offense struggling, that just speaks to like Alex Anthopoulos again, getting this pitching rotation in a space where they can just be absolutely amazing. When you talk about Max Fried, first couple starts shaky. Now he is all-star caliber. Ronaldo Lopez, all-star caliber guy. Chris Sale, all-star caliber guy. So yeah, man, that top 3 right now is yeah. And I remember when Grant, when you were on a postcast with Brad Rowland, talking about how if Charlie Morton's your 4th guy, I think that was a powerful statement. If Charlie Morton's your 4th guy, a guy who can just grind it out, a grinder, yeah, you're in a good space right now. And with the offense humming the way it is right now, yeah, the Braves are in a good spot.
And speaking of the top of the pitching rotation, got a question for Maximum and whether or not he's worth the max. We'll talk about it when we come back in Going Deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by eBay Motors and also brought to you by LinkedIn. So when we talk about eBay Motors, we talk about passion, drive, and patience. We're talking about the passion, the drive, and also the patience that the Braves had with themselves to be right back in the thick of things now. That's the same thing that's a winning formula for winning championships, not only in Major League Baseball, but also with your ride or die. So eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. You guys have heard me talk about my really cool seat covers, got them from eBay. So with eBay Guaranteed Fit, that's how I knew that they would actually fit, because it guarantees that your ride or die parts will fit every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, it's about burning rubber and not cash. So it has all the parts you need for the prices you want, and it's easy that way to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Also, our show is brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn's Sales Navigator, is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. So right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 6-day free, that's right, free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That is linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sound like a rock star today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon to get started. In full form, you look at what Max Fried has been able to do, especially I'll take these last 5 games, if you will, and he's not just looking like the ace of the staff. He's looking like all-star Max. He's looking like the guy that has been able to help anchor the staff, like we talked about with Grant before, along with solid performances and surprisingly good performances from Ronaldo Lopez and Chris Sale, and even Charlie Morton being able to kind of hang in there in that 4th spot. And we'll talk about the 5th spot in a minute, but let's just talk about the first spot, the top of that pitching rotation. Those last 5 games, a minimum of 5 innings, a maximum of 8 innings at his finest. Also, in 4 of those 5 games, Jarvis, one of those games didn't allow any runs. A couple times only allowed 1 run, and one time only allowed 2 runs. and struck out a combined 32 batters. So do you feel like with how Max Fried has performed thus far this season, especially as he continues to get better and better as the season wears on, he's kind of put himself in a position where maybe Alex Anthopoulos has to give some serious thought to giving him the contract that we know he's going to garner from the rest of the league in the offseason?
You know what? Let me add to that, right? 2 complete games as well. Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed. Outside
And
exactly before that last 5-game stretch. Yep, those 2 complete games, strong.
yeah, like we don't talk about those anymore. I mean, that's just
Because they don't happen.
those are just right. Those are just the facts of the case, right? Because
Yes.
with the specialized baseball world that we live in, you know, those just don't happen. So, but I think this is an interesting piece, right? Because we understand the financial structure of the Braves, and they just don't when it comes to, I think what the number is 22 million, I think is the number that they don't really go over when it comes
Yeah.
to annual average salary, right? So so I think it's a but I think, you know, one thing that I have learned being in sports, when you're talking about tiers of certain guys, right? There are always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about Max Fried being that left-handed pitcher, we know those guys come at a premium, right? So
Indeed.
though there's one on the roster that used to be that type of guy to command that type of salary, and Chris Sale, right? We understand what he brought to the table in his prime.
Yes.
So I feel like Alex Anthopoulos, my gut says he walks out that door, but I feel like he has to at least consider, because when coming into the season, you know, we had conversations here on the Atlanta Baseball Party, on other shows as well, on Locked On Sports Atlanta, about, you know, Spencer Strider being the ace of the staff now.
Yeah.
And then when you had those first 2 performances by Max Fried, you said, "Woo, might be right." And then when Spencer Strider got hurt, we're like, "Okay, what do we do now?" Oh yeah, we have Max Fried, the guy. It was our ace for, you know, forever. You know,
Yeah.
who was the opening day starter for us. You know, so I think that, you know, Alex Anthopoulos is in the very precarious situation because like you never go against your rules, right? And of course, seeing Freddie Freeman walk out the door, seeing Dansby Swanson walk out the door, you're just like, oh man, golly, another one. Max got to go too. But man, I know deep down, Alex got to sit up, be looking at himself and saying, I got to at least have a conversation.
Yeah.
I got to at
Yeah.
least have a conversation. Hey, Max, we might not be able to give you X, but here's above X, what we normally give people, because we
Yeah.
really want to keep you around.
Right. And I think let's go back to the case that Max Fried has made, not just this season, but the last several seasons, because him stepping back into that ace space is where he was last season, and he showed improved the entire season, right? Spencer Strider goes down beyond early in the season. I mean, it was just like we blinked, and it was like, welcome to the 2024. Oh, Spencer Strider's done. And after those 2 shaky starts by Max Fried, he looked like vintage Max Fried. So that's your second time that you've had an ace go down on this staff. And little old Max Fried, that everybody was saying, hey, he's the second best pitcher on your squad. Look who's back in that top spot. We saw this happen when Michael Soroka went down, and there was a bit of a panic, like, oh dear, who's the ace now? Who's the ace now? Who's going to step up? And Max Fried absolutely killed it. We know that he's even, I think 6th place was maybe the highest that he was able to get in votes for Cy Young, but still, nonetheless, that's still impressive, if you will, to get at least in that top 6 out of, you know, the pitchers that made it for consideration for Cy Young. The reason I say that is that might actually give him a little bit of leverage that we haven't seen before, especially because Spencer Strider goes down. And then not only do we see Max Fried kind of move into that number 1 spot, but you're continuing to have issues that we're going to talk about in the 5th spot in the rotation. It's still unsettled. And yet and still, here's Steady Eddie still doing it yet again, like he's done time and time again for this Braves organization. So yeah, I think that because of the circumstances with Soroka, now with Strider, and everything that Max Fried has done in between 2 aces going down, I think he's made the case, maybe even more so, dare I say it, than Freddie Freeman and Dansby Swanson to maybe, like you said, not necessarily get what he'll be commanding on the open market, but maybe get more than an Alex Anthopoulos and a Braves organization would normally pay, because Max Fried has truly made the case for, I am that guy. Every time another guy goes down, I stay winning and I stay giving this organization an opportunity. So they should give me an opportunity as well. Now, with that being,
I almost liken it to T, just real quick. So I liken it to almost the whole quarterback situation, because we understand what those salaries are going. Not necessarily saying he should be getting $40-50 million a year. I'm not saying that, but like general managers have to change their mind as far as how they think about those salaries, because they're going to continue to go up. And I think, just from a a smaller internal point of view for Alex Anthopoulos, like maybe that perspective has to change when it comes to left-handed pitchers or starting pitching, because it's so valuable. You see how valuable it's been this year. We talked about just a few minutes ago about how this starting pitching staff has basically kept this team afloat. To even have a chance to compete for the NL East division title. So you gotta think that Alex Anthopoulos is looking at this situation and saying, I know what we do, but I have to engage. I have to engage in serious conversations about, hey man, we want to keep you. What would it take? But we know we can't go all the way to what you want, but we want to at least come close. So let's have a conversation.
Indeed, indeed. And speaking of having a serious conversation and getting serious consideration, does Schwelling get serious consideration for that fifth spot, or is someone that's being called back up maybe going to make a case for it? We'll talk about that in the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Tax Network USA and also by Prize Picks. Here at our Atlanta Baseball Party, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. And you know what else is year-round? Yep, collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. They can garnish your wages. They can levy your bank accounts, even seize your property. So don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. I can think of someone I know, thank goodness, not me, because man, them coming after you is nothing to play with. But I do know of someone who got themselves in a world of trouble with their taxes. And I'm sure that that person having to pay thousands and thousands, nearly $10,000 of back taxes, would have really been able to utilize the help and would have appreciated the help from an organization like Tax Network USA, because they have 14 years of experience and, more importantly, an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, and they've saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. That A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau tells you that this is a reliable, a reputable company. So whether you owe taxes, you have complicated matters that require tax planning. So yeah, if your status is it's complicated, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000, or you can visit tnusa.com/locked-on. Again, it's 1-800-549-1000 or tnusa.com/locked-on.
This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Let me tell you something, guys. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on the 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. I'm telling you guys, you need to do this right now. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Yes, let me say that again. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks got you covered every week. From launching select players stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. I'm telling you guys, Prize Picks is the place to go. So all I need you to do right now is download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On MLB. Yes, Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's just that simple, folks. All you got to do, go to Prize Picks.
Jarvis, we know that the Braves are supposed to play the Cardinals on Tuesday. We know there was a rain delay and, of course, a postponement that will now lead to a day-night doubleheader tonight. Now, that's going to be Reynaldo Lopez, who starts the first game. Bryce Elder has been called up to start that second game. But before we go there, I wanted to ask a question about Spencer Schwellenbach. Now, granted, he had a shaky start on Monday, but for the most part, he's been surprisingly solid, we'll call it, for the Braves. So before we talk Bryce Elder, I wanted to ask you about Schwelly, and I'm going to keep saying it until that nickname sticks. But
Schwelly, I like it. Yes.
But do you think that other than that shaky start, the shakiest start he's had Monday, do you think that he has made, for the most part, a case to continue to be utilized in that fifth position, if not actually to get that fifth starting spot outright?
Yeah, I think he's done enough because here's the thing. Like, he only had really one bad inning, to be honest with you. If you want to really kind of look at it, some things didn't go his way. He had a pass ball and guys got on base and of course,
where it was an 0-2 count and just couldn't close it. So yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah. So it's just different scenarios that just didn't work out in his favor. Now, if he was just flat out awful throughout the entire start and he's out of there in four, yeah, I wouldn't be saying that. But I feel like you see what he has. He has an array of pitches that he can go to. So, and I always talk about how he kind of likes to stay in that strike zone, right? God, that's what you look for. Does he throw strikes? And he has a different multitude of pitches he can go to be able to say, hey, I know this guy's gonna throw strikes, but I don't know what's coming, and that's what you like to hear and see when you have a guy like Schwelly on the mound. So I feel like he's definitely made a case because let's face it, AJ Schwarber, I don't know when he gonna come back, and then Bryce Elder, he's had a little bit of signs saying, hey, I can still do this in triple A's. But, when you talk about a young guy, it's a guy every year seemingly when it comes to, Alex Anthopoulos' plan coming to fruition. It's just we always see a young guy that come up and just be that guy to come in and say, hey, if there's an injury, if they want to go to a 6-man rotation, they always got a guy they can count on. And I think that's definitely Spencer Schwellenbach this year.
Yeah. And I think, too, when you look at, and we'll talk about a couple guys as well, but you look at Bryce Elder, and you were talking about the fact that with Schwellenbach, at least we haven't seen up and down, back and forth with the pitches. He has had solid command. It just he just had situations where innings got away from him because he was ahead in the pitch count. And then before you know it, somehow, some way, there's a base hit or there's a loop out there, and all of a sudden we've got runners in scoring position that actually do score. So yeah, it was just kind of a couple of quirky scenarios or quirky instances that kind of made that a shaky start. Bryce Elder's a little bit different for us, Jarvis, still, because we saw what Bryce Elder was able to do, especially in the first half of last season. And you can't help, whether you're a fan or whether you're covering this team, to feel like, hey, can we get that Bryce Elder back? But we haven't quite seen it, at least not on a consistent basis. He'll have an opportunity today to be able to maybe get himself or reinsert himself back in that starting position, or back in the conversation to be in a position to start and be that fifth starter. But do you think a strong start today will be enough to get him back strongly in that conversation?
I think that he has the opportunity to be an option because that's all you're looking for, right? At this moment, right? Because it's not like he's vying for the fourth spot or the third spot. We're talking about the fifth spot when normally you don't normally have that many good options. And that's that's all you're looking for right now. If I'm Brian Snitker, like, okay, I got Schwelly this time around. Hey, if I need to call up, Bryce Elder or keep him up, or whatever we need to do, like you just have a lot of different scenarios that can play out in your head. as to who you're going to pencil
Mhm.
in that fifth spot. So I feel like Elder has a really solid opportunity to be able to be an option and not
Yeah.
necessarily take over the spot, because I
Right.
feel like Schwellenbach is a guy that can, continue to. I think they want to see what they have in him.
Yeah.
And here's another thing too, T, that you mentioned. You talk about, that good first half that he had last year and was able to become an all-star and
Mhm.
everything. I think that, and I'm guilty of this too. I think a lot of times when people show us peak performance, we expect them to be that all throughout, right? And
Yeah.
especially when you talk about having all these young guys coming up. So I think that we need to kind of temper those expectations and saying like, okay, where's the means? Like, right,
Yeah.
we understand what peak is. Okay, peak
Mhm.
is crazy,
Yeah.
all-star,
All-star, first
you
half,
know what I'm saying? Like, but
looking Hall
where's
of
the means?
Famer.
Like, where you gonna settle? Like,
Yeah.
we need to figure out where he's gonna settle. And I think that we haven't necessarily found that
Yeah.
because of the lows have been low, like being sent back down to AAA, so we got to figure out where Bryce Elder falls, because I think Spencer Schwellenbach is like in the beginning of that process, but
Sure.
I feel like Bryce is kind of like in a space where, all right, we need to figure out who this guy is going to be. And I think that's a little bit more of a dire situation than Schwellenbach, and from a mental standpoint, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. And also figuring out which, when you think about what Spencer Schwellenbach has been able to do and maybe what Bryce Elder will be able to do, that gives a little bit more space and opportunity for Alex Anthopoulos to pause and for Brian Snitker to pause on what they'll do with Ian Anderson. He threw, of course, 3 innings with the Braves Complex League affiliate Monday. He just allowed 1 run on 3 hits. He struck out 3. And his next rehab start will come Sunday. Now, I don't think we know which affiliate quite yet, but I definitely think it's a good look that Ian Anderson is progressing. And also, AJ Mintzer's rehab assignment was transferred to AAA Gwinnett. He pitched Tuesday, 1 inning, only gave up 1 earned run, walked 1, but had that four-seamer going. He had the cutter going. He was up in the low 90s as far as speed goes. So, or velocity velo was good
Hmm.
for him. How
Yep.
big would it be to get Mintzer back?
Like, add
Yeah,
another option in, right? Like, that's what we're talking about, because the bullpen is strong. Like, the bullpen
it,
has been strong.
yeah,
Like, the pitcher staff as a whole has just been so consistent this
it
year.
has.
And I think that we focused in on the struggles of the bats, right? Like, but we haven't been highlighting and giving the flowers to the guys who've been throwing the ball across the plate and keeping
Yeah,
them in games and winning them games, you
yeah,
know, from time to time as well. So yeah, I think that to be able to get a guy like AJ back, a wily veteran, right? It'll be great. And then the great thing about it though, T, you don't have to rush
yeah.
them. Hey, take your time, get it right. Take your time and do it right, as that song say. And I think the Braves bullpen will be just fine.
Yeah, because as the Braves continue to push their way back into the conversation, whether that's the wild card combo, winning the division outright, etc., the more that you can give the opportunity to the guys that you hope that you'll need in October, the more you can give them time to rehab and be 100% when they come back, the better. Thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Baseball Party. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. And not only do we want you to stop by the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday, but yes, shameless plug, make sure you go to our Locked On Sports Network later tonight, where we will have the deets, the lowdown, the rundown on every single team that has a pick in tonight's NBA draft. Your girl is hosting that. I'll be happy and appreciative if you guys can check it out, because it is absolutely some good stuff. Starting with our guy, Brad Rowland, from our Locked On Hawks postcast to kick it off if the Hawks stay in that #1 spot. See you tomorrow.